You're listening to Impolite Society with Laura and Rachel.
You ready for the song?
I'm so ready for the song.
I wonder if you'll know it. Okay, here we go. I practiced so much for this. I do my hair toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling?
Feeling good as hell. Hell yeah, I know that song.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I was very nervous to sing it because it's like Lizzo was queen.
She is. Well, I think that is a really good intro song because if I'm thinking about who is really into self-care, it's definitely Lizzo. I mean, a lot of her songs talk about it. You know, treat yourself something from the higher shelf.
So she is the queen of self-care. So I could not open this podcast with anybody other than Lizzo, my goddess.
Cheers to Lizzo.
That was our glasses clinking. You know, it was not a sound effect that we created.
Self-care is a hot topic. People talk a lot about it. It's especially right now. You know, 2020 was a rough year. We're all kind of doing what we can to get by.
Exactly. But you know what else is a hot topic? The name of our podcast. This is Impolite Society. I'm Rachel.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. I'm Laura. This is Impolite Society. Should I redo that? Oh, my God.
No. I love it. It's fine. We jumped right into the topic. We got some feedback. We dallied too much, so we just jumped right in. Fuck our names. Fuck the show. We're here to talk about self-care. This is Impolite Society, the podcast where we take turns asking each other rude questions that would not fly in polite society, and then we dig into it through our own experiences, some research, and some philosophizing, and we like to make jokes that would make your grandmother blush.
We like to try.
We definitely make jokes, whether they're good or not. That's kind of up for debate, but here we are. And we always kick it off with a song that relates to the topic, which is why you heard Lizzo sung by an amateur. Here's the concert choir in high school. Let's get back to the subject that we were so
really
anxious to talk about.
I am. I was so jazzed. Okay, like I was trying to say before I skipped the introduction. 2020 is in a rough year. We've been doing everything we can to just get by. So many things talk about it.
So many glasses of wine. To get by.
Yeah, exactly. Well, really, this was kicked off, though, by that tweet you sent me. So Rachel's texted me a tweet that kind of got my hackles up.
Oh, definitely.
It spurned this podcast. And so it's by somebody named Steve Bartlett. He's got a blue check.
You don't know who Steve Bartlett is?
No, I don't. Who is he?
He is a Twitter verified tweeter. Obviously.
He's got a blue check mark. He's super fancy. So the tweet is, quote, "Your mental health is more important than your career, money, other people's opinions, that event you said you would attend, your partner's mood, your family's wishes combined. If taking care of yourself means letting someone down, then let someone down." That tweet, it takes a good concept about taking care of yourself and just took it to the nth, man.
I don't know Steve, as we joked about. We are not aware of who he is, but man, my guess is he lives a lonely life.
Well, enough that this tweet was screenshot and then kind of sent around in social media as a something to, I guess, aspire to? Question mark?
Yeah, no, it was literally like a screen grab on Facebook. Like somebody screenshotted it, posted it, probably one of those self-care, self-help groups.
Another thing this really made me think of, and we'll kind of dig into this and about why it gets my hackles up, but talking about self-care, society, it's really done a complete 180. Older generations, I think my parents, but definitely my grandparents, 100%.
Yes.
Focusing on yourself in any way, it is selfish. It is a character flaw. You need to be out there working. You need to not think about, what's wrong. Just bury it down and just keep going.
Well, and it's perfectly summed up in the World War II generation, the silent generation, the greatest generation. On the Brit side especially, keep calm and carry on.
Yeah.
It wasn't about you and putting yourself first. It's carrying on. And that's so true across the board of the greatest generation.
Yeah.
You compare that to today, people can't even wear a mask. They're like, I can't be mildly inconvenienced to protect other people. But 2 generations ago, 100 years ago-ish, people were literally sacrificing everything for the betterment of society. That does feel like a huge 180.
Yeah, it's me, 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 me. And not only on the bad side, but you know, and there certainly is a fair amount of that negativity, like the tweet. But we're also saying that focusing on yourself and your needs, it's healthy and it's necessary. That once you take care of yourself, you put your oxygen mask on first, then you can assist others. And I think that there is validity in that, but sometimes it goes a little bit too far.
Oh, I have opinions, and you're going to hear them all.
So the theory of self-care is that taking care of yourself will benefit others in the long run. When does this go too far? When does self-care turn to selfishness, being self-centered, being a narcissist, which is, of course, the worst? Which brings me to my impolite question for you today, Rachel.
Okay, I'm so ready.
Is masturbation self-care?
I think it falls into the same rules as the self-care discussion in general. You know, if you're putting on your oxygen mask, if you're using it to get by so that you're not, like, I don't know, mounting anybody who walks by you, that's probably self-care. But if you're relying on masturbation and, you know, it's damaging your romantic relationships or your physical relationships, that's, I think, a perfect analogy of when it goes too far.
Yeah. Taking a little bit too much good care of yourself.
Where you literally prioritize yourself and your needs over other people and your other sexual partners.
Yeah. All right, so let's dive into the research here. I have to say that I really went down the rabbit hole on this topic, because when you talk about selfishness, there's just so much to unpack. So there's cultural norms, there's ethics, there's economics when you talk about selfishness. But I really wanted to nail in on this self-care aspect, specifically then about the self-culture. So we do a lot of finger pointing nowadays. It's just like, you're selfish, you're self-centered, you're blah, blah, blah. I feel like that's something that gets thrown around.
Oh, definitely. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the self-care epidemic, okay, I shouldn't say epidemic.
Might be a little dramatic, maybe a little.
I'm the most rational person you've ever met in your life. No, this self-care has risen up right alongside with this toxic friend, this toxic people.
Yes.
And you can't have a little of A without a little of B. And I feel that when you start taking care of you self-care, that tweet is self-care to you, but to somebody else, if your friend's constantly standing you up for events, that's toxic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your care is other people's toxicity.
Yeah, 100%. And so if we're going to get in and define all of these different terms that we talk about what they mean and what they truly are, let's narrow in on what they are. So first up is self-centered. I feel like that's the one that gets tossed around the most. And that's somebody that's always trying to turn the focus on to them. And every story comes back to them and how it affects them. So if somebody's telling you, like your friend is like, oh my God, I just had the worst week. I got fired and my dog died and blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. Does that mean you're not coming to my party on Saturday? It's all about how everything else affects them.
So this one's always been not a sore subject, but a major insecurity of mine. Because when people talk to me, sometimes I worry that I'm seeming self-centered. Because if you had said, oh, I got fired this week, maybe the first thing out of my mouth would have been, oh yeah, I was fired one time. It was embarrassing and hurtful and it sucked. And is that self-centered? Because it's flipping it back to me.
No, I don't think so. I think that means that you're relating to the person. I think with anything, there's a fine line, right? Like if you make the whole conversation about like your thing that happened, that would be a no-no. But if you're saying like, no, I've been there, I know what you're feeling and it sucks, I feel like that's not self-centered. That's just conversing.
Can we be vulnerable about being fired though? For real. I got fired from my college newspaper and my editor made a mean meme about me that I found on the internet.
What?
First and last name.
What
something about comparing my writing to like somebody writing while drunk, which to be fair, I podcast while drunk, so.
That's a shitty thing to do. That person is a bad person.
She needs to take care of herself and grow as a person, but I can't remember her name, so I can't call her out.
Think about it, and we'll call her out later.
I straight glowed up.
All right, so next up in the lineup is selfish. So these are the people, they put their needs and wants above others first. They are a taker. They're not a giver. It's if there's that last pizza and somebody hasn't had pizza, they're like, I still want that pizza, right? Like, they're not thinking about anybody else. They just want what they want.
That's a totally fair analogy, because people who are food selfish are the ones that jump out the most at me. And that might just because I was raised as a woman, so I am more conscious about how much food I eat in comparison to others at the table or others around me. Let me just say that my fear of being selfish or coming across that way, it makes tapas really hard. I hate tapas.
She doesn't do tapas, ladies and gentlemen. We've gone to a tapas restaurant and she's like, I don't like to share.
I just don't want to be monitoring every bite I take compared to every bite you take to make sure everything's even Steven. Sorry.
It sounds like a lot of work.
I don't like tapas. Anyways, because I'm worried about being selfish, because I think that what you said, everybody knows that person. And I go to office culture because we both worked in the office. We all know that person who goes back for seconds before it's really socially acceptable, or loads up their plate, or stows away leftovers before everybody's eaten.
Oh, okay, that's all right, because I like to eat. I like to chow. And I will take that last piece of pizza. However, I will make sure that everyone else has had pizza. Do you know what I mean? But if everyone has had the equal amount of pizza and there's a slice just sitting there, what, we're all going to be nice and nobody's going to eat it and we all want it? You know what I mean? Like, if somebody's going to take it, might as well be me.
Fair. It's the more of that, well, I don't want it to go to waste.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I'm like, I have just as much as claim to this last piece of pizza as anybody else does. You know, if we've all had pizza.
True. And this might be something that nobody ever experiences again, because we'll never see our office mates ever again.
We'll never fight over the last pizza.
And we'll all be happy.
So talking about insecurities, I have a selfish streak, what is the word? Not a greedy streak, stingy, like, kind of streak in me that definitely comes from my mom. And that I do a fair amount of taking versus giving. But I don't want to be completely unfair to myself. I think I'm a kind person and I think about others, but I mean, when it comes to, like, two needs, it's like your needs and my needs are almost always going to come
So would that be selfish or would that be self-care? We'll come back to that, I'm sure. We're just defining the terms. We're just establishing a common vernacular at this point.
Hey there, listeners. It's Laura. We all need to indulge ourselves every now and then. But what about those nights when you overindulge a bit? Your innocent evening of self-care has taken a turn into a wild night. And luckily, there's a podcast for that.
Hello out there, eardrums. I'm Rocky Powell, host of Wild Nights with Rocky Powell. Get to know me and my guests, who are entertainers from all over, as we relive our wildest nights, one episode at a time. New episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts every Monday. And follow me at Wild Nights with Rocky on TikTok and Instagram. Wild Nights with Rocky Powell. Everyone's got a story.
Next definition.
Oh, good. We're going back from the personal stuff to defining words. Merriam-Webster describes narcissist as
self-centered, lack of empathy, this sense of grandiosity, feeling that the rules don't apply to them. So they have, like, pretty much all the characteristics of above. You know, they put their needs above everybody else. They're a taker, not a giver. They're always turning the focus back on them. They also have an extreme lack of empathy. They think that they're much more important than they are, which is why the rules just don't apply to them.
Is it narcissistic to turn this back around to myself right now and say I feel triggered? I feel personally attacked.
How? Why? Why do you feel personally attacked?
I think we touched on that, right? I always turn the conversation back to myself, even if it's me, quote unquote, trying to relate. Lack of empathy. I mean, I guess maybe. I don't know. We'll have to touch on that again. Sense of grandiosity. Hello, I have a podcast. I think people want to listen to me talk. That's pretty self-aggrandizing. And that rules don't apply to me. Hello, that's how I live my life.
I think you're a rule follower. You're totally a rule follower.
But normal rules don't apply.
I am not a rule follower. I'm always like, rules are made to be broken. I'm going to do what I want to do.
So maybe you're a narcissist too.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of a sense of grandiosity. Like you said, I do have a podcast.
Wait, you have a podcast? Tell me about it.
I do. You're on it right now. And lack of empathy. I don't feel like I have that one. I'm a pretty empathetic person, especially when I'm like, everyone could be not very empathetic when they are just like given a scenario like on paper, you know what I mean? But then when you see people, that's when things really give you a punch in the gut. Oh, here's my example about how I definitely do not lack empathy. I was watching this Forensic Files last night. Or 2 nights ago, and I usually love Forensic Files, and it doesn't get under my skin at all. But this one, there was this woman who was carjacked with her 11-month-old baby in the back. Like, she was changing the baby's diaper, and the guy just shoved her in the car and took the car away. And I'm like, what happened? And like, normally I would be like, this one's kind of a bummer. Maybe I'll turn it off and go to the next one. But like, I had to know what happened. So the woman was found bludgeoned to death in a field, and her baby was next to her. And I'm like, what?
Was the baby alive?
The baby was alive. I started bawling. Like, I was like, oh my God, the baby's okay.
Yeah, how do you draw the line, though? If you've already bludgeoned one person, they're like, oh, I'm going to bludgeon this lady, but I'm going to draw the line. I'm not an infant killer.
I'm good. I'm glad that they drew the line because, I mean, like, of course, the best case scenario is that everybody comes out alive. But if one of you has to die, you're, you know, as a mother, take me. 100%.
Or are you a narcissist because it relates to you and your experience, so that's why you cared about it, not so much that you felt for that specific woman, but you could empathize with her more because she was in a similar situation to you.
But isn't that just empathy in the end, though?
I think empathy in its truest form is relating to somebody else's experience without ever having to experience it, right? You can feel sad when the middle-class white woman is murdered because I'm like, oh, shit, that's me. And this is why I think we talked about white women like true crime because that's who true crime almost explicitly focuses on. But it's easier for those same podcasts to not talk about women of color and their experiences because it's harder to empathize. We didn't think we were going this far. Let's keep it light. I'm gonna backpedal.
All right, backpedal.
PC
All
Rachel.
Right. We're going back to the definitions. The last one is self-aware. So this is somebody who keeps their own needs in their brain, and they treat them with as much consideration as they treat the needs and wants of others. And I think that is what we should all be striving towards. So you want the last piece of pizza. Everyone else wants the last piece of pizza, and everyone's already had first serving of pizza. And you're aware of what everybody wants, and you treat your own needs or wants with as much consideration with everyone else. You don't put everyone else in front of you. Because if you put everyone else in front of you, you're a freaking doormat. Nobody wants to be
Nobody wants to be a doormat. But I feel like that's how a lot of women are in that situation. I would have been self-aware and thought that, I want that pizza because I always want more pizza. But I would not take it just because I've been programmed to be more giving to other people, or at least in a public sense, right?
Okay, maybe you can work on that.
Yeah, but okay, needs is a very loosely defined.
Yeah, do you really need that last piece of pizza? Okay, that's fair. All right, so let's dive into selfishness versus self-care. So selfishness is pretty profitable when we talk about economics, right? So you scroll through Facebook for 5 seconds and they're advertising with all this dumb shit that you really do not need, but it's there because it makes money, it gets clicks. Where selflessness, thinking about charity donations, I don't see a lot of calls for charity on my Facebook feed.
Do you see a lot of product ads on your Facebook feed?
Oh yes, a ton. You don't?
Oh man, all I see is articles about Bridgerton. I think that says a lot about me.
Yeah, maybe my shopping ads say a lot about me, I guess. But
have you watched Bridgerton?
I have not.
Oh, it's very popular.
I will have to check it out.
It's like a combination of Pride and Prejudice and Gossip Girl.
Does not sound like it would interest me.
With very beautiful people. You don't like period
No,
pieces?
I do, but usually when they're pretty serious, not when they're part Gossip Girl.
Oh, there's seriousness.
As she
No,
drinks
there's
her
not.
wine. Like, "Yeah."
It's like romance, but the people are just so gorgeous. Anyways, sorry. I've just been reading a lot of listicles about Bridgerton.
So, all right. Selfishness probable. Selflessness is not. Self-care, though, it is a very profitable business.
Hugely profitable.
10 billion in 2014. So we can imagine that just grew and grew and grew. So we're talking self-help books, massages, life coaches, chakra stones, apps, about meditation and wellness retreats and blah, 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 blah. The list goes on about all the shit that people bill as self-care. And we'll get into that later about what self-care actually is or isn't.
But it's really just buying stuff and consuming.
Exactly.
But let's just say here, maybe it's in our best self-care interest, Laura, to make this podcast self-care, self-help.
I like self-hair.
Self-hair. I have lots of self-hair. I hair all over myself. But then, here we go. We self-hair, and then we self-sell some razors to get the self-hair
we're
off
totally
of
going to
you.
bueld this podcast as self-care.
This is called vertical integration.
Do I finally understand what vertical integration is?
We haven't had a 30 Rock reference in a while, so we needed it. We goddamn needed it. But what I'm saying is $10 billion, that's a lot of money. Let's get in on that slice of the... Let's get our own little slice of the pie.
Yeah, we are definitely going to build this as self-care because, like you said, there's a shit ton of podcasts about it. So here you are. Welcome.
Self-care, why you should take the last piece of pizza at your company office party.
We're having
Boom.
a marketing
That's what
meeting
it's called.
in the middle of this.
Definitely. But also, while you said it's profitable and there's a lot of podcasts, in marketing our podcast, I'm sure that's so boring to listen to. But in learning about podcasts and being a part of the podcast community, I see a lot of the self-care, the self-help podcasts are directed at women. And that is something that I've seen in my research for today's episode, where a lot of the self-care, self-help, like 9 out of 10 of these books, these media is directed at women. So, is it really because women can't take care of ourselves, or because we are just a profitable
Because
target?
women always
for
feel like
this?
they're not good enough. I mean, that's the short question, or the short answer is that forever women are just thinking, I need to be better, I need to be better, I need to do more. It's never enough. So that's why all of this is marketed towards us, because it's preying on our insecurities that we're ingrained with.
Oh, definitely. So is any of it really, is doing all of this self-care, this meditation, this stuff that you're spending money on, is any of it really self-care, or are you just being victimized?
By society. And this is, again, the classic Laura Rachel debate. Is it victimization, or are you being played? You're allowing yourself to be played by this because you have the ability to rise above. You have the ability to listen to impolite society and rise above.
Rise above. How much are your eyebrows?
I'm not going to answer that question. I got microbladed recently. It's a work in progress.
It was self-care.
No,
it was self-care.
It was pure vanity, and I know it. So speaking of selfishness, all right. So let's go back to the research here. So
of course,
assume, and I think a lot of people assume this actually, that when you behave selfishly, it's always good for you, but bad for others. And this is this utilitarianism philosophy theory, is that whenever you're doing anything for yourself, you're inherently taking away from something else. The time that you spend doing something for yourself, you could be spending doing it for the greater good of humanity. And I don't agree a lot with utilitarianism. I have some issues there. And there are cases when this is true, when people benefit at the expense of others by putting their needs before others, like crime. If you're going to carjack someone, you're obviously, preying on others. But not every scenario is a win-lose scenario.
I mean, and even in that case, I don't really think of that as I'm profiting at your loss. It's like I'm risking my own loss at the same value of your loss for the potential that I come out ahead in it. Because it's like you're playing a game of poker. You're both anteing up. They're anteing up. Well, they don't really know it, but their stuff's getting taken, and your time potentially might get taken by serving jail time. So I don't know if it's like, I'm taking this so I gain and you lose, but it's just like taking this is worth more to me right now than the possibility of losing in the future.
I don't think they think that much.
I don't
Personally, know. I think it's more of a I want this right now. I'm going to take it, and you are going to lose. You are taking something that rightfully owns to somebody else and acquiring it for your own selfish needs, and leaving this person then without the thing that they lawfully purchased and own.
I don't know, Laura. I'm just trying to empathize. # not a narcissist.
But so not every scenario is this win-lose scenario. So when no one else's
definitely not.
interests are involved, selfishness is fine. I mean, when you go and you brush your teeth, when you're showering, these things that you're doing primarily only for yourself and your own needs. But
your betterment, it's benefiting you and no one else.
Exactly, and it doesn't
like masturbation.
It doesn't take away from anyone else. Exactly. So not all of these acts are selfish inherently, and even then, when other people are involved, selfishness isn't always bad. I mean, that win-win scenario is where economics and commerce comes in. I want this product, I want your money. Fair exchange of goods and services. This is a win-win scenario. Everyone is acting with their own self-interest, and everyone wins.
And this, it might sound bad, or this might be telling of me, but this is honestly kind of my approach to relationships as well. Like I'm a married lady. I am a Mrs. Waving my ring around, but I'm married to a man, and neither one of us is selfless in this marriage. We are both in this marriage because we get something out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. God, I would hate to be in a selfless marriage where somebody's there just like, I just want to give you everything you want, and
God.
I don't, my needs don't matter. I'm here. I'm sacrificing myself so that you're happy.
Literally sacrificing. That's horrible. But yeah, I get companionship and a friend and a life partner, and he gets my salary contributing to. Just kidding.
I thought you were
going
to say he gets my sass. I thought you were. That's what I thought you were.
No. He's 100% here. He's like, whoa, dual income. This is nice.
But yeah, so there's a lot of win-win scenarios when both people are acting, quote, selfishly, and that's fine. So that black and white attitude doesn't really work. But so talking about selfishness, so is it self-care or is it selfish? There's a lot there, and a lot of people, there's a lot of articles about how self-care isn't selfish. And enough that it made me like question, like, why are there so many articles about this? Are people, do people inherently feel bad about self-care, which is why all these articles exist, to assure people that it's not?
Doth lady dost protest too much.
Yeah, that is exactly kind of what I thought as well. Yeah, I do think that, or maybe that comes back to just women inherently always feeling guilty, right? About things, and they're like, should I be taking time for myself? I remember when I was a part of Weight Watchers, there were all of these things that were always focused on, like, it's okay to take time for you. It's okay. And I'm like, blah, 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 blah. like,
this is already part of my life.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're like, if you want to perform an act of self-care, like, don't eat, like, go buy that book you've wanted. I'm like, if I wanted that book, I had already bought that book. You know what I mean? Like, I had to...
it's called the local library.
Or
thank you, socialism.
The purse that you wanted or whatever. Like, it's like, oh, go treat yourself with the thing that you want.
And that just opens a whole nother can of worms. It's where self-care is consuming and buying stuff.
Absolutely.
Which we're going to get to that in a second because, oh man, I've been holding my opinions. I've been holding them, and I'm ready to open the floodgates.
Okay. So let's talk about, there's a lot of things that define selfishness, but what defines self-care? When does it go overboard? And the hallmarks of self-care is something, it brings out the best in you. It is intentional. It's thoughtful. It's nourishing to your soul and your like recharge. It's not a purse. It's not eyebrows, you know?
So what do you consider self-care?
That's a good question.
What do you do for self-care? We haven't talked about that.
It's embarrassing, but one of the things that I do for self-care,
is masturbate?
Well, yes, I do actually, but not.
You asked the question.
Not as often as I'd like, but I listen to a lot of ASMR videos when I want to like chill out, and it's about, you know, taking myself down a notch. You know, when you're like super hyped up, and it just like it centers me. I know that sounds silly, but it does. It's something that levels me out instead of, you know, me being stressed or depressed or tired or whatever, that it resets me. It's like a reset button.
To me, self-care, when we talk about it in the definition that you just read, brings out the best in you, is intentional, thoughtful, and nourishing. To me, self-care is going to be doing something that helps you in the future, right? Mm-hmm. So when I think of self-care, I think of taking extra time to clean my closet, or taking extra time to straighten something up, or taking extra time to self-care. My self-care for the day is I went on a walk, and it was snowing, it was cold, it was wet, and I took my dumbass dogs and the three of us, we went on a 3-mile walk, and it was not fun, and I didn't want to do it, but I knew it was self-care because I feel less guilty drinking this wine as we record. My dogs snoozing peacefully during the podcast recording, and I literally was prioritizing my future self over what I wanted in the moment, and that is honestly what comes down to why self-care just gets under my skin, because most of the self-care that I find that people do, the bubble baths, the fancy facial things, I don't know what they're called, face masks, all those things, the mani-pedis, like they're just ways of avoiding responsibility in the moment to indulge.
So yeah, you see them as self-indulgent.
100%.
Is there
100%.
any kind of care that you indulge in, that you consider self-indulgence? I don't think self-indulgence is always bad, because if you're going to spend your whole life, you know, depriving yourself for that future payoff, is that nourishing? You know, like, okay, get the hallmark self-care, so it brings out the best in you. Sounds like you really did not want to be on that walk in that moment. Were you grumpy at that moment? You know, were you feeling light and airy and at home with the world? You know, when you're walking your dogs and it's wet and cold and you're pissed.
I mean, the start was never great, but when you're out there and you're in it, it feels good. The same thing with exercising, the same thing with doing a hobby, the same thing with doing anything that's nourishing or worthwhile is homeostasis, right? An object in motion stays in motion. An object in rest stays at rest. It's hard to change your course, but once you start that action, once you build that energy, it feels good. I have never regretted going on a walk. Yeah. Never regretted going on a run. But is it hard to do it at times? Fuck yeah. It's hard to get it when it's snowing outside and you're cozy on your couch eating tortilla chips. Like, like I didn't want to go, but you know, I said, you will appreciate this in the future. And that's what self-care is. Do you appreciate that you took an extra long bubble bath? I don't know. Maybe you do.
I think that you would. Yeah, I would. I know that I would. I appreciate after I watch my ASMR videos and I'm like, like, or this afternoon, I took a nap. Like, oh my God, I was just in such a freaking funky, weird ass mood. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm like, I gotta go to sleep, I guess. And I took a nap and I woke up feeling 1,000 times better than I was before. Like, before it, I was all like, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? What am I doing? What is going on? I take my nap. I wake up and I'm like, and I was just a much happier version of myself. So, I mean, that's a good example, I think, of just basic care, is that you know, I come back to the world refreshed and ready and in a better mindset. And I'm certainly a better wife, you know. In that moment before the nap, I was like, fuck you. You know, after the nap, it's, what do you want for dinner? You know, like it's a completely, it's a reset.
Yeah, okay, as long as you don't regret it in the time, or you're not using this quote-unquote self-care to avoid real responsibilities, which I feel like a lot of self-care is, where it's like, oh, I'm really stressed right now, I have all this stuff to do, I'm so stressed, hashtag self-care, I'm going to take an hour and a half bubble bath and eat chocolate and drink wine, when guess what? All your fucking shit's going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like, when I feel overwhelmed, do you know what helps me not feel overwhelmed? Doing one thing that's on making me feel overwhelmed. Or it's usually specifically one thing that has got my goat, and then I just do that. You just do it. I don't know.
Hashtag just do it. But okay, so we kind of got ahead of ourselves. So when talking about self-care, when does it go overboard? When does it lead into that negative aspect?
Well, definitely. Yeah, we talked about, you know, do you not regret it after it's done?
Mm-hmm.
So here are some of the signs, is what you're going to tell me, that you might not regret it, or when your self-care has become self-indulgent.
Exactly. And so the first one is it costs beyond your means. And that immediately makes me think of Parks and Recreation, the treat yourself. Like, I remember watching that and like, I mean, it's fun. It's fun to say. I try to say treat yourself all the time. But listening to the things that they list in there, I'm like, oh my God, you're spending like $20,000. like these Gucci shoes and all this crazy shit. And that is not self-care, especially if it costs beyond your means, because later you're going to be even more stressed when you get that credit card bill and you can't freaking pay it.
Well, and treat yourself implies that you are denying yourself at other times. And if you're not truly denying yourself, then treating yourself, that's non-existent. Yeah. It's just like, just you spending more. And you know what? I don't think treat yourself worked out so great for Aziz Ansari when he was sticking his fingers in that poor woman's mouth. He was treating himself, and guess what? That was not self-care. You canceled.
I'm not super familiar. I know that something happened with him, but I don't know what it is. So
I'm not either.
No
I watched
comment.
his stand-up after the fact. He did a stand-up routine after the fact, but I mean, he's no R. Kelly or Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Don't treat yourself. Be a little bit aware in the moment. Hey, it's Rachel. Shit, that was really awkward, but it's Rachel, and we don't have any sponsors, but we wanted to shout out someone who's way more important, and that is you, our listener. So we want to shout out folks who give us reviews, and first up is Jessica, aka Zero Dark Tooth Hurdy, for leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. I don't know what you were doing in the year 1989, but I do know that Tina Turner was there with you because she wrote the song The Best About You. Also, our hometown shout out this week goes to Centennial, Colorado. You're a suburb of Denver, the Mile High City, so we want to send you a high five. If you want to hear your hometown in this segment, be sure to hit download. Tell your friends and family and have them hit download as well. That takes you to the top of our list. If you don't have any friends, join the club. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And, you know, if you wanted to put a little message in there that you want us to read on the show, I will happily read it for you. We have no shame. So download, rate, and review. Thank you so much. You are simply the best.
Second one is avoiding all discomfort. And I think that one really ties back to our original tweet here.
The tweet!
So your mental health is more important than your career. Okay, yeah, it is. But if you are saying, I can't go to work today because I just can't even, again, you are avoiding anything.
Or there's there's a challenge or there's a project or there's something that I'm intimidated by. So I'm just going to avoid it and say I'm too stressed to handle it.
Yeah, I'm prioritizing my mental health, and this is just too stressful for me right now.
Exactly. You're not doing yourself any favors. You're not
No.
growing. Growth comes from discomfort. And this comes down to the very core of when people cancel plans. And I was on a women's networking call, and it was professional women. And this one woman said, I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm just saying I'm okay canceling plans with friends just because I don't feel like it or just because I don't have the energy. And I'm just like, what? That's not something to proudly say.
I think it depends on how often you do it. But I'm somebody, I don't do this in general. Like, because sometimes I don't feel like it coming up to the moment. And I'm like, you know what? I said I was going to go. And to me, my word is my bond. And so I am going to chalk it up and I'm going to go. And much like that walk, I never feel badly that I went.
Exactly. There's been situations you absolutely are dreading. You're like, I do not want to go to this. It seems awful. It seems this huge thing that I could never do. And then you just fucking do it. And you're like, worst case scenario, it wasn't that bad. And I know this might, like, real talk being vulnerability. Laura, I went to your baby shower. I knew not a single other person. I was sitting in my car just being like, I can drive away right now. And I can just text Laura that something happened and I couldn't make it. And I got out of my car and I went in and I talked to your family and your friends and they were all lovely. And I had a good time. There was Trulies. I was like, oh, thank God. I don't know if there's usually drinking at baby showers, but that always makes things a lot better.
I'm glad that you came. And I'm glad that you did not avoid all discomfort under the guise of mental health and just said, I'm not going to do it. Because that...
Toss the present out on your mom's front lawn and drive away.
Because you're right. That is where growth happens. That's where... So the next time that you're in that scenario, you can remember back and be like, hey, okay, this happened. I was dreading it. I thought it was going to be awful, and it wasn't, and it was fun. And so it'll give you that much confidence to do the scenario again. So another hallmark of going overboard is numbing or masking your problems. So turning to that wine and saying, oh, this is self-care.
Or if your bedroom is so messy that you literally wake up with anxiety every day, which I've been in that situation in college. Yeah. Hey, depression. But you wake up and everything's just such a mess that you can't, it makes you feel awful. But instead of doing anything about it, you're like, well, I need to go relax. Yeah. Like, I need to take care of myself. But in that situation, cleaning, doing the dishes, making yourself a nice meal, going grocery shopping, that's taking care of yourself.
And it would make you feel better in the long run.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what they say when you have like extreme depression. They tell you, like, just do one thing, and you can just prove to yourself that you did it. You can do it, and it felt good. You have to start with just one thing. I'm really guilty of the numbing or masking my problems as far as like medicating with food. That is 100% my MO. I'm like, I've had a bad day, and it just like whatever.
I deserve it.
Yeah, I fall into that trap constantly, and I eat that pint of ice cream, and I'm like, I don't feel so good. But you know what? What I do notice, this is something that like I came to the realization of as far as my food issues. It's nice because when I eat that whole pint of ice cream, I'm no longer upset about whatever it was I was upset about before. I know where you're going. Upset I ate the pint of ice cream, and that is a very familiar place that I'm in. I'm in that place all the time where I feel bad about what I've eaten.
Well, and there's a clear solution.
Exactly.
Yes?
Yeah.
If you're upset about grander things, something at work, something in life, a friendship thing, often those endings or those solutions are not clear-cut. Yeah. Wherein you eat a pint of ice cream, you're like, oh, I seem to be stop being such a fat slob. That's easy.
Totally.
Like, you can pinpoint the problem and the fact that you ate the pint of ice cream in one sitting.
Absolutely. And like a lot of times that comes from just like, honestly, like a general malaise that I couldn't even like pinpoint as to what is it that's making me so blah, but then I eat the ice cream and I'm like, okay, this is the thing. This is my problem. You can identify what it is. And so you just see, again, how people, and myself included, misuse self-care as a way to avoid all these things. And the last hallmark, self-care going overboard, is being overindulgent. So, I mean, I think that goes back to beyond costs beyond your means, avoiding discomfort, numbing or masking your problems, taking that extra bit that you really don't need to feel recharged.
Then that's what it becomes the opposite of self-care, because you're prioritizing the now over everything else. And my best example of that is on my birthday, Dan, my husband, made me puppy chow, which I don't know if anyone's familiar with puppy chow.
Yes.
Oh my God, it's the best thing on earth. And he made me a whole bunch of it instead of a cake. It's literally Chex Mix, peanut butter, chocolate, powdered sugar.
It's magic.
It's crack to me. I would literally heat it up in a spoon and inject it.
Ooh, or pour some milk on it and eat it like cereal.
Well, the milk, the milk takes up volume in your stomach that you just could be replaced with more puppy chow. Moral of the story is he made me a serving, like a whole thing of it, which is like almost a whole box of Chex cereal. I ate the whole thing in a day. 24 hours.
Your Ralph?
Never. No. I'm not wasting that puppy chow. Nay. I say nay. No, I ate the whole thing, and I was being self-indulgent, but in the moment, I'm like, it's my birthday, I can do what I want, you know? And then some people, that's what self-care is, like, it's what feels good right now, hashtag self-care, but it was definitely overindulgent. But I skipped dinner that night, so don't judge me too hard, America.
So this, I think, we're kind of giving some examples, but I think it's a good question to ask. How can you tell if you are actually performing an act of self-care, or basically if you're just being a selfish baby who's like, I deserve this, and eating your puppy chow? Or in my case, eating my pint of ice cream and saying, I deserve this. You know?
It all comes to how you feel after the fact, man. If you can do your hashtag self-care and on the flippity flop, you feel better about it, better about yourself. I think that's what it comes down to. Even though I won't always agree. I think if you're spending money, you're not taking care of yourself. I think if you're spending a considerable chunk of change, that's not self-care.
What about education? If you're spending a considerable chunk of money on education.
Well, it depends on what you're being educated in. Because I can go and spend a lot of money getting a master's degree, but if it's not about something I want to do, it's not self-care. It's me paying to play.
So, as far as, the hard and fast rule, I think that's good about how you feel afterwards. If you feel just as stressed afterwards, then you probably didn't actually perform, or more stressed. You didn't perform an act of self-care. You just avoided discomfort.
I think, exactly. That's what hits the benchmarks, is you feel better after, you're not spending money on it, and it's helping in the long scheme. Wherein I feel like a lot of, and yes, I said wherein for the second time this podcast. And I'm very aware of how all of a sudden I start speaking to forth, there be, go forth.
Go forth. Go forth, Rachel. Go forth. Well, I guess this kind of comes back to the original question, right? Masturbation. Is it selfish or is it self-care? If you're doing it because, you need a mental reset button, and you're going to come back to your partner, with just as much rev in your engine, at some point.
Wait, where is that reset button?
Right there. Bingo! That
press around it, but not directly on it. My button is sensitive.
It depends on my button is not so sensitive. You can go right at it.
We promised some impolite conversation.
But so it all just depends, because I mean there have been times that I have been late to work because I woke up and I'm just like, you know what? I'm feeling this right now. And, you wake up with a little pep in your step for the day. I may be 10 minutes late to work, but I'm feeling good. So to kind of change the subject a little bit, I think it's interesting. I just wanted to touch on this because there's, like we talked about at the beginning, there's so much finger pointing about being selfish, right? I think it's interesting because doing that, it's really kind of selfish in and of yourself. Right? So when somebody doesn't do the thing that you want to do, you're like, that's selfish. They prioritize themselves over over what I wanted them to do. It's like, well, isn't it selfish of you for you to say that your needs supersede this person's needs? You know what I mean? Like, I go back to, like you said, that toxic friend thing, because I had this friend previously that used to always say that I was so selfish. It was like, am I really selfish, or are you just expecting me to drop everything in a moment and put you above everything else?
Yes, yeah, because we are that tweet. What is his name? Ricky Bobby? Ricky Brown?
Bartlett.
Damn,
Fuck
I was
you,
close.
Steve.
We all are Steve at times, where we expect the world to revolve around us. But spoiler alert, it doesn't. And if you have that expectation, you're going to be very disappointed in life. Yes.
So then, when is it better to value others or collectivism more than valuing yourself? When is the greater good more important than your self-care?
Maybe when there's a global pandemic.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
Yeah. Or a second world war,
Yeah.
or something where the greater good is beyond you specifically. Or there's climate crisis, like maybe you don't need those plastic water bottles. I think there's times in all of our daily lives where we could probably think, let me think big picture here instead of my convenience in the next 30 seconds.
I think
it's
there's a
hard.
common thread in all the stuff that you were talking about, and I think that's multi-generational. You know what I mean? So the
Yes.
effects of a world war, a global pandemic, the earth, it goes beyond just you and your life. Like, it will affect your children and your children's children.
Maybe not, because World War is like, what's going to happen to me right now? Pandemic, I'm more concerned about the older people. And climate, yes, that's for the future generations. For sure.
World War, I mean, if the entire map is redrawn underneath a mad dictator, that's certainly gonna affect your children and how they live.
Well, but it's going to affect you first. You're going to, like, if somebody's saying your way of life is threatened, you have to go over there and fight for our, like, a liberty and freedom. That's going to be about me. That's not about my kids, because my first priority is,
I think it's about both.
I'm trying, well, both, but I still think it's more immediate. Getting involved in World War II was immediate threat. They came, like, you know, they bombed Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
This is happening now. This isn't for kids.
Yeah.
This is now. So I think, yes, we've landed on self-care. If we're going to put a little bow on this conversation, it's that self-care.
A little button on it.
We're going to hit the button.
Around, but not on.
Exactly.
Unless it's Laura's button,
So-
and you're going to hit it straight on.
We're gonna. I don't want to say. I'm a Christian. No, just
No,
kidding.
you're not.
I'm something, I think. I don't know. I sold my soul to someone. I don't remember who.
Jesus.
But Jeebus, I think it was his name. He had antlers and cloven feet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Is that Jeebus?
Yeah, I know Jeebus.
Okay, cool. Anyways, so put the bow on it to hit around the button. Self-care is something that helps, like, you do and you don't feel guilty about it. It helps you move forward. It's not avoiding your problems. It's working towards resolving them or being in a better mindset to resolve them. And it's not at someone else's cost.
Yeah, I think that's a good bow. I think that's a good wrap-up. And also, don't spend beyond your means, and don't rely on consumerism to fund your self-care, because you don't need to buy anything.
And being better, and literally self-care, taking care of yourself. So how you would take care of somebody else, do that to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Put yourself down for a
Problem
nap.
solved.
Same as you would put your baby down for a nap, put yourself down for a nap.
And it only took us an hour to get here.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's it. I think we have successfully chatted through selfishness versus self-care. What do you think?
Let us know exactly what you think. You can reach out to us on social media, the Facebook, the Instagram, because we old, and under Impolite Society, just search it. It'll come up. Download. Give us a review. Oh my God, that would make my life if you could just do those two things. At Impolite Society, wherever you get your podcast, and If you have your own rude question, email us rude@impolitesocietypodcast.com.
Give us your questions.
And on that note, what
Are
is that?
those, I think, those could be drums.
Oh, they are definitely drums. Good as hell. And we are done.
All right.
Are
That's
done.
definitely us being done. All right, guys. See you later.
Thank you so much.
Bye.